community members who are organized around the premise that we believe that our community deserves excellent health care, and we believe that our community is active and engaged, and that we are willing to fight for it. So we are here today at this business forum because Angela Chavez, who is our gracious host, asked us to come because she wanted us to present to the business community and to engage, see if we can engage with each other to find ways that we can work together to make our hospital systems the strongest that it can be. And so I think that it might be helpful for us to describe a little bit about the history of the last 18 months and the reasons why the Community Health Action Group came into existence. And then after that, we're going to hear from a few speakers. So we'll hear from Dr. Val Wangler, who is here from, who was a former employee of RMCH and who many of you know as a community leader, especially during COVID as the Chief Medical Officer there. We will also hear from Dr. Tim Putnam, who is a former CEO of a large critical access hospital in a rural community in Indiana. He is well regarded in the rural health business community, and we invited him here to provide some outside insight because many of the lessons that he learned over his career, I think are probably applicable here. And I know that we have a few visitors from out of town. I do want to point out that the RMCH Chief Finance Officer, Chantelle Venter, is here and is graciously here to, I think, hear from you and answer some of your questions as well. So I think I'll start just by sort of talking a little bit about the history over the last 18 months. So 18 months ago, as many of you know, the hospital was being run by a gentleman named David Conejo. So David Conejo was forced to resign by the Board of Trustees at that time because of some issues with financial management that had come to light, and which came under investigation by the state auditor. So after Mr. Conejo separated from the hospital and after the Board of Trustees was reformed, the only person on the board was somebody named Steve McKernan, who was a former CEO of UNM. By his recommendation, another individual named John Smithberg, who is an employee at Community Hospital Corporation, which is a management company that is run out of Plano, Texas, came here to run our hospital as an interim CEO. After 6 months of being here, the Community Hospital Corporation was signed on for a 3-year contract in May of 2021 to manage RMCH. So we have noted that in the 18 months since Community Hospital Corporation has been a part of RMCH, that there have been several concerning trends that brought the community members that are comprised CHAG to organize. So the first thing that we noticed was that there was a distinct pattern of retaliation and issues with workplace issues that were causing many of the people who had been working for a long time at the hospital to resign. So to give you an idea, rural hospitals see turnover all the time. But what we were seeing at the hospital is that over 18 months, that over 65% of our permanent nurses had resigned. Many of them well known to you: Mary Ipple, Sarah Picker, Susan Palachuk, who is here today. And none of these people left because they were seeking higher pay. All of them left because they were concerned about the work conditions that they experienced. We lost over 40% of our permanent physicians. So many of these people came here because they want to serve a community, and they bought houses, they were here to stay. So these were issues of concern. We noted that the financial state of the hospital was beginning to decline. In 2021 alone, we noted a $10 million loss. And we've noted that also that people are seeking care elsewhere. So the hospital is only financially viable if people go to seek care there. You can't get paid unless you provide services. At this point, over 40% of the people in this county are seeking care elsewhere, as far as Albuquerque or even further than that. So we're here today because we are organizing because we believe that this is not something that, we believe that our community deserves excellent health care and that we can achieve it, and that we are a community that is far from apathy and we're willing to fight for it. And we're a community that has internal expertise, local leadership, and the ability to organize to save our hospital. Okay, so, Okay. So I think that I'm going to keep my piece short because I do want to hand it over to our local experts and Dr. Putnam. I would ask that I'm hopeful that Chantelle Venter would be willing to also say a few words as well as a representative from the hospital. But I just want to, as a physician and working in a rural community, I think that there are some stats that really struck me when, as I've been doing reading about how hospitals really impact the economic health of the community. So, for example, I know that. We know that rural hospitals are the largest employers in the community. We know that our hospital alone employs 500 to 600 people. But we know that that's not the only economic impact that the hospital has. We know that there are also ripple effect jobs, people who have jobs because the hospital exists, but who don't actually work at the hospital. We know that hospitals bring revenue to local communities. So hospitals are often tax exempt. So in the United States alone, $9 billion of tax revenue is foregone by communities because hospitals don't pay taxes, but that comes back to them 11-fold. $95 billion comes back to communities based on the financial benefit that these tax-exempt hospitals receive. And it should be noted too that every primary care physician that comes into this community, and I will note that this county is one of the counties in New Mexico that has the greatest need for primary care physicians. Every primary care physician who comes to this community not only provides an opportunity for our loved ones to receive care, they also generate more than $1.4 million in wages, salaries, benefits, and 26 jobs for each primary care physician in the local community. So these are just the general stats, but I think what we really want to hear today is how this actually shows up in your daily life. How does it impact your business? So I will turn it over to Dr. Wangler first to discuss a little bit about what, her thoughts about what the hospital means to the community and what she thinks rural healthcare here can look like. And then we'll move on to Dr. Putnam. So if you don't know Dr. Wangler, she's been here for 12 years. She worked down in Zuni for 8 years as a primary family medicine doctor. She not only was responsible for instituting some health technology programs down there, but also was responsible for the building of a $1 million youth enrichment program down in the Zuni Pueblo, if you've ever been down there and seen it. She came up here 4 years ago to be the chief medical officer. She founded the family medicine residency program, which is a pipeline that was intended to bring people into the community to serve as primary care physicians. It's been a tremendous leader in times of COVID to ensure that all of us are safe, and it's undoubted. Her work has undoubtedly saved lives. So anyway, I'm going to hand it off to Dr. Wangler.
Thank you, Connie. And wow, it's really great to see everybody and really get the business leader perspective here today. I think that's really critical and something that we definitely don't hear enough. First, I just want to say that the Community Health Action Group, the CHAC, that Val Wangler and a group of really phenomenal, concerned community members have put together, the amount of time, effort, work, heart that they put into making sure that your community has the healthcare that you deserve it's phenomenal. I've never seen anything like it. The number of just volunteer hours, the texts at 2 in the morning, it's really, really remarkable. They're working tirelessly to make sure that we all have access. As Becca said, I really appreciate Angela and the invitation and the ability to use this great space tonight. My 3-year-old son's absolutely replacing the planet at the skate park is right next door, so he's a lot of time here. And wanted to recognize the representatives that have taken time out of their really busy schedules. Mayor Putnam, Councilor Paget, Councilor Cannon, thank you all so much for being here today. Really appreciate it. I think, for those of you that don't know me, I think Connie did a great job. I moved to McKinley County in 2010. Certainly been here longer than anywhere else in my adult life. I really consider this home. My kids, my 3-year-old, my 2-month-old were both born here, and we just really intend to be here forever. So, one of the things that I think I really appreciate the business perspective over the last 3 years, I think. Usually also in the middle of the night, I've been working on my business degree, my master's in healthcare administration from Hopkins, and it's really given me a really great perspective of everything that you all go through every day. And I think that intersection between healthcare and business is so critical because we don't have a viable financial model. If you're not bringing that revenue in the door, you can't provide the service that the doctors and nurses, the frontline clinical staff want to be there every day to provide. So it's really important, and I'm also really grateful to be speaking with Putnam today, who again just has a wealth of experience in these roles. But I don't want to talk too long. I know that we really want to hear from you all today and really understand your perspectives and concerns. So I think I just want to paint a little bit of a picture of, sort of my vision of what healthcare in Gallup and County could look like. And really, we don't have to look far to have some examples of places that are not getting everything right, nobody's perfect, but doing a lot of things right. Just before I started at RCH, I did some locums work, some temporary work at Scola Hospital in Grants. And just, I took a look at their website today. You'll notice that they're not very often in the paper for, challenges or financial struggles or a lot of things that unfortunately we see here in Gallup. And just in those 4 years since I worked there, they've brought in a really great cohort of OB-GYN providers and some great OB work. They've added orthopedic services. Even in the challenging times of the pandemic, they've been able to really expand, bring a lot of new providers to the community. It's done a really phenomenal job. They increased their inpatient capacity by huge amounts during COVID, and they really were able to step up and make that happen. And so did the frontline staff at RCH, right? There were so many people that worked just tirelessly, just shift after shift. We would call nurses, we would call physicians and say, hey, I know you just got off, but we have 6 patients in the ER that need to be admitted. We need you to come in. And I really feel like we have such dedicated local people, such talented, amazing, skilled folks here in Gallup. And we just, the biggest thing that we need to do is to learn how to capitalize on what we have here, on our local folks, train them, make sure that we're supporting our own folks, and I think that we could do phenomenal things with the people that we have here. You'd be hard-pressed to find people like Mary Hill, Sarah Pickard, all the folks that unfortunately have left the hospital. Susan, we've lost so many great people that really have given their heart and soul to the organization and to the healthcare of our community over the years. And I think that we have every opportunity to rebuild that, to get that. It's not easy, it'll be a long, difficult process, but those people want to come back. They want to serve you, they want to serve this community. This is what I want to be. I think what Connie said about what we call out-migration, so the patients going other places for care, is really important to think about for a minute. So depending on the source, 40 to 50% of people from our community going to Albuquerque, going to Grants, going to Farmington to get the care that they need. And you all are business people, so imagine you're running the dry cleaning company and half of Gallup is taking their dry cleaning to Albuquerque. That's a really tough business model to sustain, right? We have to be able to have the trust of our community to say, hey, if something happens to me, I know where I want to be. I want to be right here at my hospital, in my community where I know the physicians, I know the nurses, they've been there for decades. I trust them to take care of me and my family. And I think that, unfortunately, over the last several years, we've lost a lot of that trust. And now, again, it's not easy to rebuild, but it's totally feasible, it's totally doable. There are excellent people here, and we kind of have the quality of care here that you would not hesitate to come to if you need medical care or you're looking to need medical care. It's 100%. When I was working, I worked, clinically as a family physician. One of the things I love about family medicine is that you get to work across a lot of settings. So for some amount of time, I was working what we call hospice service, so admitting the patients that need to be And for the first couple of years that I was here, whenever a patient was in the ER, again, we would just do everything we could. We would call a nurse in from home, we would call in one of our providers to come and help with the admission. We would do everything we could to keep that person locally. By the end of my tenure, every day we were turning down admissions, we were turning down transfers. RMCH is a bit of a catch net, right? So back when I worked at SUNY, we would send people to RMCH all the time because they needed ICU level care, they needed a little bit higher level care than we could do at SUNY. And by the time I left, the other facilities had really stopped calling. They knew that we would say, oh, I'm sorry, we don't have staff, we can't take your admission. And so those are opportunities that this community should be able to, we should be able to provide those services to locally. For some of us, going that you might remember Thomas is in Albuquerque, right? So for some of us going into Albuquerque for a visit, I like go out to dinner, it's kind of fun, and make a day of it. And some of our patients don't have that opportunity. For some of our elders, it's really hard to get it all the way to Albuquerque for anybody. Some of our from outlying communities where they're already driving an hour just to get to Gallup, and then we say, hey, I'm sorry, we can't help you here. You're gonna have to go to Albuquerque. You're gonna have to go to Phoenix. You're gonna have to go somewhere far away from your care, be hospitalized away from your family, where you can't come and visit you and provide that support. So it's really, as much as it's an inconvenience for some of us, it's a real barrier here for those that have fewer resources. As I said, I think that as much as we have problems, we have an incredible set of assets here in the community. The commitment, the dedication, I think COVID showed this in a lot of places, but absolutely it showed this in Gallup. I remember in the early days of COVID, we didn't know, right? We had no idea if whenever we went into a patient room that we knew had COVID, if we were going to catch a deadly disease and not be able to go back home to our families. We just didn't know. And fortunately, it's less scary now. We're vaccinated. We're able to. It was. They came to work. They, Dr. Laubert was running the hotel program and going out every day to take care of people that we knew had COVID, and we didn't know how serious it could be or what we might take home to our loved ones. And nobody complained. Everybody said, "All right, Dr. Wangler, let me know what time you need to be there." They showed up day after day at risk to themselves and their family. And I think that just says so much to me. That's a lot of why, I feel like this community is home, this community is where I want to be, because that sort of dedication and commitment is really remarkable. And the clinical talent, I think, again, particularly over the last several years, we brought in a cohort of physicians from some of the best training programs nationally. We added urology services, orthopedic services. We had a fantastic OB/GYN group. We had the family medicine residency faculty. I would put up against any group anywhere. They were a really, really phenomenal group. And so it's heartbreaking to see so many of those people, as Dr. Liu mentioned, so many of those people moving on and looking for other jobs. And a lot of them want to stay. A lot of them are finding other things in the region because they feel as I do that this is where they want to be and a gap is home. And I really believe that if we can rebuild that relationship and that trust, then treat our clinical workers, our nurses, our lab techs, our physicians, our housekeeping staff, everyone that comes together to make hospital care work, if we reach out to them, if we listen to them, if we work with them as a team, I think that I think a lot of those people would be thrilled to come back, and I think that we would be able to recruit other excellent people to join us here. There's something really special about Gallup. It attracts people that have that mission-mindedness, that want to be here because they want to serve. They feel like this community really is something special, and so that's that was a really fun thing about being the chief medical officer, is that in a lot of places you end up in long discussions about salaries and benefits, and everybody I talked to, everybody we recruited was like, tell me about the community, what's the difference I can make? I'm here because I want to serve this community. And so it was a really fantastic, awesome opportunity, great role to have, and it was because people are so dedicated to you all, to this community. So how do we get there? I do think that, the last and without being part of the community, without listening to the folks that are here, without meeting the patients, without going to the community events, it comes into a managerial position. And, in a way that is profit driven, right? And so I think that what we need is local leadership. I think we need people that are here for the right reasons, that are mission driven. And you guys have probably heard me say this, like patients over profits. It's phrase at some other times. But it really, to me, that really has to be at the forefront of healthcare. Again, I absolutely understand that you have to bring revenues, you have to attend, you have to bill correctly, you have to attend to the finances. If you don't have a sustainable hospital, you can't provide care to anybody. But those patients, the patient care, our frontline staff who are such a huge resource, those have to be top priority. That's what makes us. What's about healthcare, right? Otherwise, we should be in, venture capitalism or banking or some other field. It's really that attention to the patient that makes us special and always have to come first. You may also hear this term MSO or Management Services Organization kicked around. And I won't go into that in too much detail, but I just wanted to sort of introduce that concept, which is basically a lot of rural hospitals will rely on an organization to sort of help, I'm going to use organize, or I was going to say to organize management in a way that has a clear manages, the CEO, the finances, the human resources, all those pieces that can be hard for a hospital, which is, again, really focused on the patient in front of them, really focused on the day-to-day. So having a management service organization take over some of that management responsibility has been really helpful in a lot of rural communities. And I think where we got off track was thinking, oh, that has to be an outside entity, that has to be, a company from Texas or wherever that comes in and does that. And I think that, what we've learned is that we have the local talent and that we have a level of commitment that really, trumps a lot of what an organization like that from outside could bring to the table. I think that keeping those revenues, keeping those profits, keeping that the financial side of that locally is critical too. Those are again, the important jobs for the community. As long as we have people coming in from all over the country, flying in for 2 days a week and flying back, we're not going to be able to get the same sort of thing for our buck that we can from the US and those local folks. So again, I want to make sure that we have lots of time to hear from Tim. I want to make sure that we have lots of time to hear your concerns. But I just want to leave you with, excellent, accessible healthcare. It's not a pipe dream for now. It's an absolute possibility. And it will take all of us working together. I think the hospitals in a really desperate financial situation right now. I think that we're sort of at the crunch time to be able to turn things around. But I think that we can. I think we have to. Because our families, our employees, the people in this community need excellent healthcare, and we can do that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wangler. I do just want to, I think that some of the issues that she brings up are really important in the context of the fact that we have such a strong community and we have such a community commitment. I think maybe just before we move on to Tim, I want to just bring us up a little bit up to speed about what has been going on in the hospital. And I want to give at least just two illustrations of why the leadership under Community Hospital Corporation was so problematic and why this, why the members of CHAC have been working so hard to separate the hospital from this leadership. So the best example we probably have is of labor and delivery. Labor and delivery is run by 12 nurses. And so a year ago, 11 of those 12 nurses were permanent employees. 11 of those nurses were people who lived here. There were 3 OBGYNs who moved here, chose to live here, and actually still live here, even though they no longer work at RNCH. So 11 of 12 permanent nurses and 3 permanent OBGYNs, that's what we had a year ago. And now what we have now is 11 of 12 nurses who are hired by an outside company. These are local nurses who aren't from here. They are not people who know the team intimately, who know what to do in case of an emergency. These are not people who are, these are people who are paid 3 to 4 times as much as a permanent nurse, especially now that nurses are so scarce. And we don't have any OBGYNs. We have a family medicine trained, an OB trained family medicine physician who is excellent, but she can't take care of our entire community. And we are again relying on locums providers, people who come from the outside, who come here to work for a week at a time and then they go back to their homes. People who don't know our community. So this is what happened under management with Community Hospital Corporation. And we know that it happened because of a toxic work environment that was directly related to administration. CHAG administered a survey to current and former employees from December to January. We were able to get 33 responses, and we asked everyone, the former employees, why did you leave the hospital? The vast majority of these individuals said that they left because of issues with administration, because of toxic work environment, because of retaliation. But then we also asked them the question, do you still live here? 2/3 of them still live here. And then we asked them the question, would you be willing to come back and work at RCH? And the majority of them said, absolutely. If there were changes in leadership, we'd be willing to come back. We also want to point out that there were issues with transparency with this particular management company, Community Hospital Corporation. It's very clear that we have been asking repeatedly to get information about the hospital, to have conversations, and and it's very clear that this was not a company that was willing to engage with the community. And frankly, feeling seemed to be that we were a bunch of people who just didn't know anything about healthcare. But the fact is, we have a lot of expertise in our community, and I think we're making really smart recommendations. So, as many of you know, about a month ago, the county commissioners have some leverage over the lease of the hospital. We really have to thank our city officials and other people in this room for really making noise and helping and talking with the county, who then a month ago moved to initiate a termination of the lease on the hospital, because that's what the leverage that they have over the hospital. And so about a month ago, they said that they were going to initiate termination of the lease, which would be effective in 180 days. And that in order for this lease to be reinstated, they need to meet 5 conditions. So one condition was a new CEO, somebody, an alternate from Don Smithberg, who was the CEO at the time, and they wanted that person to start by May 15th. The other conditions have to do with transparency and communication with the community. So transparency with staff, transparency with the community, and transparency with the commissioners. So up to this point, what we have seen is that, so we have a new CEO, his name is Robert Whitaker, he comes from Kansas, and we know that he's moving here and he has started his job there. And we know that we have talked to the county commissioners about specific ways that we can implement formal ways that the community can achieve transparency with the hospital. A community advisory board, a mandate that the majority of people who represent us on the board of trustees need to be from the community. And we haven't yet heard any of those things, and we do need to share some additional information that will come up very soon about our experiences with the new CEO that went out in a press release today. But I think that before we do that, I think we should talk to Dr. Tim Putnam to just get his read on what a hospital who's in a dire situation like ours, what it can do to turn around. So I will say that, this is a question of some serious importance, because our hospital at this moment, for our sources, has less than 7 days of cash on hand. We have people who are in the emergency room and other departments who reached out to us saying that because vendors are not being paid, even including local vendors, people are going out and they're buying their own toilet paper, they're buying their own pulse oximeters, they're buying Band-Aids, they're buying paper, they're buying office supplies. Our hospital has a very narrow window of opportunity to turn around. So I don't want this to be a message of total panic. I want to talk to Dr. Tim Putnam, who has been around for many years. So Dr. Putnam is, Rose, if you could help switch this so that Dr. Putnam's face shows up on the screen. Sorry. So Dr. Putnam is from Batesville, Indiana. He served there for 10 years as the CEO of a rural hospital, rural critical access hospital, which has a 5-star CMS rating, which has multiple services. He is an expert in multiple areas in hospital administration. He has a doctorate of hospital administration. He he chairs the Graduate Medical Education Board in Indiana, and he serves and he has over 30 years of experience working in various roles in various institutions. And what I find really interesting about Tim is that he really has this unique connection to his community. While he was serving as the CEO and someone who was front and center as the leader of the hospital, he got his license as an emergency medical technician, so would go out on ambulance rides and pick up patients periodically. So I think that Tim has a lot of wisdom to share, and we thank him for his time here.
Thank you, Dr. Wood. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, well, thank you for the opportunity to speak to this. I really appreciate it. I really applaud your efforts working together as a community for the benefit of the health of the people in the community and helping the lead healthcare organization remain viable. It's a difficult time for rural hospitals across the nation. Before the pandemic started, there was a rural hospital in this country that would close every 3 weeks. The pandemic changed a lot, made some things better, some things worse, but I think it has done it. So I'll limit my comment to that time period. But I think what does happen is a series and it's many times there are those that we did not get engaged. We did not know what's going on. One of the things that we see the nation fighting is that it takes everyone working together. Many businesses are in the room today, and I applaud you because hopefully as businesses you understand the hospital is not just a place to go when they're injured. It helps the economic livelihood tremendously. The more people that are employed, more companies locally, more people in your community, it helps raise all that economic liabilities. And hospitals without, our communities without a vibrant, high quality, engaged hospital suffer economically because of that. New businesses don't want to move in, people don't want to come in and live in the community without good access to quality health care. So it's a big economic driver, and I think there's 500 jobs that are currently at the hospital. So that's a big piece of it. Also, it's important to recognize cost of care. Without a thriving local hospital, without hospitals that open, that offer services like obstetrics and other vital services, we have to go long distances, many times more expensive from an insurance standpoint, but they definitely don't get the preventative care that they need. So many times it becomes very expensive when you go to hospitals in Albuquerque or even farther away. So I'm here to answer any questions. I know it takes the community working with the hospital, and that's why transparency is a big part of it. We really have to know what's going on, what we can add. In rural communities, we don't have the resources that urban does. We can gain from local business leaders, work together. But I guess that's one big thing: the hospital should not work in isolation. And that's one thing that you really want to strive for, to be able to work together. Community and the hospital and community leaders all work together to do what's best to keep healthcare local. So, Dr. Liu, I'm glad to answer questions or any other points that you would like me to make while I'm on the screen.
Thank you. I think for the moment, I think what we can do is hold on, because I do want to ask with less than, let's say there's less than 3 days of cash on hand, with so many people who are seeking their own supplies, do you think there's any hope for our community, and what specifically do you think the community can do to rally behind our hospital and to save it?
When it comes to that little available cash, that all amount of cash or the limited available, it takes everyone working together. What do we have to do to make this viable? There's probably going to be some ability, some need to loan, have funds that are loaned to the organization to remain viable. Cash on hand, that's a very low number, and it depends on a lot of other factors of exactly how viable it is, but it clearly states that it is a concerning situation. And it really takes kind of all the community understanding what's going on, and exactly what the challenges are, and what it takes to strengthen the organization. And some of the things that you shared about people that are local in the community that want to work for the hospital and are currently not are very concerning. Because again, when you bring people from out of the community, you lose that connection, but also the cost is very high. And costs continue like that, it will not take long to work through 3 spare days of cash, especially given a lot of the payment models, a lot of the payment issues that are going on in the post-COVID world, where what we've had over the last couple of years has been the federal government funding hospitals to make sure they stay viable. And the tolerance for that additional funding is really running out. So the things we've received over the last 2 years to remain functional during the peaks in the first several months of COVID, we're not going to see those large bills coming through Congress to give this bolus of cash to local hospitals nearly as much. I really don't think we're going to see much of that come through.
I think we want to open this up to the floor. I do want to just have a little bit of discussion, and then I think we need to share share the contents of a press release that we're going to send out today. So I will pull it out because I think that this is relevant to all of us. So as you know, I think that there are some things that happen at the hospital to give us hope. We have, so Ms. Venter is a former nurse and in the military who now works in finance and is known as a turnaround specialist. We really have a lot of reason to hope because she's here, and as you can see, she's engaged with the community. She's here today. These are things that give us hope. We have county commissioners who are listening that gives us hope. But I do think that it is important to point out that there are some barriers that stand between us and getting ourselves out of this hole and building towards the hospital that we know we need and deserve. And one of those things is that we were hoping that with the new CEO arriving, that this meant the end of the toxic culture that was driving away so many of our staff and driving away so many patients that came with Mr. Smithberg. One of the conditions that the Board of Trustees placed on when Mr. Whitaker came is that Mr. Smithberg was no longer to be involved in any part of the operations of the hospital. We have several well-placed sources who have indicated to us that Mr. Smithberg is still in fact running the hospital through proxies, through Mr. Whitaker, and through we have submitted that evidence to the county commissioners. I think we have some specific examples of how that happened. So Rural Health Solutions is a consulting company that was hired in order to fix so many of the damaging issues that occurred between staff and executive leadership. And the contract was to be cost neutral because we actually obtained a grant in order to have them do their work on site. But this past Friday, Mr. Whitaker, at the behest of Mr. Smithberg, actually fired Rural Health Solutions. And they are no longer going to be able to complete their contract, and in fact, the hospital will have to pay in order to end that contract early. What is troubling about this too is that Rural Health Solutions was responsible for writing grants that are due on April 30th that would have brought the hospital $1 million in revenue. And because they are no longer working for the hospital, they will those grants that funding will not come to us. So it's puzzling decisions like this that these are things that would have brought the hospital out of what we and has helped us to move forward. But we do still have some obstacles before us, and that is primarily that we are really advocating for the true separation between our hospital and community hospital corporation. I don't want to say that this is all bad, though. I think that we do have leadership at the hospital who do have productive ideas and do have a path forward. I don't want to. I'm putting her on the spot, but Ms. Venter actually did give a very productive plan that she put forward at the Board of Trustees meeting last Wednesday. She's undertaking these 100-day micro plans. She can just explain it better, but things that will short targets that are intended to make great progress to bring us to the revenue and bring us the cultural change that we need in order to bring patients back to the hospital to keep our staff at the hospital. Is it okay if I put you on the spot?
Okay.
Yeah, okay, all right. I was hoping that she would talk, because I think it's important to know that we do have leadership at the hospital that cares and wants to work with us. So,
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay. So, forgive me, I used to do spreadsheets, not speeches. So I'll do my best here, but I did thank you for the opportunity to speak a little bit about how much I've just really been coming to love this community since me and my husband relocated here in January. My husband over there. And he's also involved in the community. We just really been enjoying this place. So speaking on behalf of the hospital, I can confirm that the situation is dire. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. In fact, I am a turnaround CFO, and I'm often called into situations where hospitals usually the bankruptcy situation. But let me start tonight by making a statement that community involvement is going to make all the difference here at our limit. Sorry, I used to do spread. I used to be on a computer. This hospital plays a central part, just like we've heard in the previous speeches that people have been talking about. It takes place because of the community, the economy, and the people that call this place home. In order for a community to be financially viable, it needs a thriving hospital, because all the support staff pay taxes in the community, even though the not-for-profit hospital does not pay taxes. The hospital also pays the GRT tax, and all of the staff that work there go to restaurants, they have their dry cleaning here, and they support the communities. In fact, one of the things that's really dire about this hospital that really brings me a lot of pause is the fact that my email is full of local businessmen and local businesswomen, some of whom are here tonight, that have been asking me to pay their outstanding invoices, and I just don't have the money. And these guys are suffering because they're small businesses and the hospital cannot afford to pay them. So I'll say this again, that community involvement will make all the difference here. My career has afforded me a lot of opportunities to work with and observe hospitals all throughout this country, both as a nurse as well as a financial executive. I've seen what bankruptcy looks like for a hospital and the community, and I'm especially skilled in this area. In fact, I was on call this last weekend with someone who used to work with the Biden administration, and he said, I've never seen a hospital come back from bankruptcy. And I was like, I absolutely have. And in fact, one of my hospitals in California was in bankruptcy twice, and I pulled it out from a loss of $27 million a year and made it to a gain of $5 million a year in under 2 years. So I know it's possible. And so I'm going to tell you this, Rehoboth isn't bankrupt, but I can turn this place around. But I cannot turn this place around without the community support and the help of everybody in this room. My goal is to improve relationships between the hospital and the community by providing strategies which will bring Rehoboth into sustainable prosperity. We cannot turn this hospital around if patients in the community don't return and have their appointments at the hospital. We can't turn the hospital around without the understanding and the support of our local vendors and local suppliers. So give me time and I'll make this right. I want to encourage the community to return to the hospital as patients and have confidence we will meet your needs. There's a lot of work to be done, but all the financial plans in the world that I will write, and one that I'll talk about in a minute, will not mean anything without the continued community support, like I see here tonight. That said, I have a plan. You're correct, Connie. I brought up a 100-day financial improvement plan. I call it a FIP typically. And the reason why I do break it down into 100 days is so that we don't get lost with everything that's going wrong, and we have one focused goal of moving forward. And the focused goal for this next 100 days is to get revenue into the hospital. My plan sounds simple, but there's a lot of moving parts. But it starts with just a really big win. It starts with the Rural Health Clinic. The Rural Health Clinic is a special designation provided by CMS that provides extra funds to communities that are impacted by being rural, by not having access to care. And so what we have here is once we roll out this Rural Health Clinic, this is the real number, we will increase clinic access by 450%. Not only will this financially save the hospital, it will cover the gap, but it will also provide a complete increase to patient care. The second part of my FIP is the hospitalist program. Right now, over 60% of our hospitalist providers are from out of state, and they're very expensive. They're what's called locums. By revamping and bringing in local doctors and revamping the hospitalist program, we can save the hospital nearly $2 million a year. The third one is really near and dear to my heart. This is the documentation and training. This program will empower our employees, our nurses, and our physicians by providing them the education they have been craving and a healthy feedback loop to the hospital administrators like myself, allowing for continuous learning and allow for our employees' voices to be heard. Who has the most knowledge of how we can save money in the hospital? It's our frontline staff. Who has the most knowledge of how to increase quality outcomes for our patients? It's our frontline doctors, like Dr. Wangler over there. I want to support our doctors and our staff by giving them a voice and providing them with educational resources, dashboards, and metrics they've been asking for years. Running a hospital cannot be done on a spreadsheet. It runs on its people. The next two are based on the 340B program. This is a special favorite of mine because I've used it to turn around hospitals and local clinics before. This is a program that's designed by the government to support small, not-for-profit hospitals, particularly rural hospitals. This program was originally canceled by accident just with turnover due to COVID, but I turned that program back on as of April. And this program will save the hospital a lot of money to provide prescription drugs to our Medicare and Medicaid population. The next piece is about expanding the 340B program. I would like to use it for our in-house mixed use, and I would also like to expand it by working with providers in the community who can come and bring their patients to have infusion services using the 340B program in our hospital. I used the same technique in one of my hospitals in California, and I was able to bring in $2 million a month to that hospital. Not only was I able to decrease the overall cost in services for our patients, but I was able to do it across the board because that this was so profitable for the hospital. And I want to do the same thing here. The last but not least is I want to increase efficiencies in our operating room in our emergency department. Our mothers and fathers and children must be able to have surgery, and they need to get into the emergency room before they've been there for 8 hours. I used to be an emergency room nurse, and I can tell you we have terrific emergency room doctors. A few tweaks and we should be able to see more than double the patients and increase access and cut down wait times. I just need the time to build a plan with our physicians, build reports and data so they can start coming back and seek our care. And lastly, and this is near and dear to me, as far as the community in this town, I have been incredibly impressed. I've been talking with several individuals in the community, and typically when I go in to do a turnaround, they just don't have the people or the resources, and the community doesn't care. People care here. It's what's making me fall in love with this community. And when I also look at the people in this community, just the high caliber, and even the people in this audience, it's phenomenal. So truly, thank you, Dr. Liu. I know you spend endless hours working for this community, for everyone in this room, and for this hospital, and I know you're not alone. I also want to thank Dr. Wangler. As I explained earlier, I've worked in a lot of hospitals. But this was my first time working for a Physician of the Year, and I think there's a lot we can do together. You have great insight for this hospital. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Chantelle. I do want to point out that Chantelle is an employee of CHC. She, in fact, the entire C-suite, so the CEO, the CFO, the Chief Nursing Officer, as well as the Human Resources Director, are all direct hires of CHC. As you can see, Chantelle has prioritized our community over corporate need, but I can tell you that an administrator, former administrator, Dr. Wangler, actually, has spoken up and told us about what happens at some of the management meetings with CHC leadership. Dr. Wangler recounted previously a story where she recalls that in a meeting that employees and administrators were told that they had to be pro-corporate and pro-company and not pro-community. We want employees like Chantelle who prioritize the community over corporate interests. And with the CHC contract structure the way it is, where these important people who fill these positions are contracted to CHC and not to the hospital directly, is hugely problematic. So this is why we have a petition over there that asks the Board of Trustees to divorce us from this management contract with CHC, to free us and free our leadership to serve us. Because it's very clear that currently, while Chantelle serves us, it's very clear that many of her initiatives are being stymied by other CHC leadership. Rural Health Solutions was something that she implemented. So for example, and she was the one that said, many of the physicians that I know in town talked how excited they were when she came to them and said, I want to have monthly meetings with you to repair some of our relationships. Mr. Whitaker has completely stopped those, and Mr. Smithberg has told him to stop talking to the physicians. This is not the direction that's going to get us out of the hole. This is the direction that we want to go. So I just wanted to just bring that up. I want us to sign a petition, and I want to hear all of your ideas about, I think Chantelle talks about how, and Tim too, talks about how it's going to take the whole community coming together and working together to bring people back to the hospital and make the hospital viable again. Maybe we should open the floor now and just hear what your questions are, hear what your ideas are. I'm really excited because I think we have such a vibrant community here, people here who care so much. So, I don't know, we can just open it up. Yes?
Hi, I'm Jayla Linkley, and up until 2 weeks ago, I was the coordinator for our amazing residency program. My family has owned a small business in Gallup since 1982. So I'm here as a representative for former RMCH. I'm here as a patient. I'm here as the daughter of a local business owner. And I have seen things be done at that hospital, decisions that affect our entire community, and things that will affect our local business and economy. When you look at how many positions are up at the hospital, those people go home to their families. I'm sorry. I apologize. Thanks for comment. She's always keeping me on. So these people that work in the hospital, they go home to their families. They go to local grocery stores. They go to movie theaters. They go to buy furniture. They go to various places in town, restaurants, and they go to spend that money. That money goes back to local economy. Over the last few years, we actually lost the refinery. So when you look at the local economy and how losing the refinery and the people that work at the refinery and they lost their jobs, how that affected our local economy. Think about 500 to 600 employees losing their jobs also, and how it will affect our local economy. I'm sure that after the refinery closed down, we're seeing a lot of people selling their very expensive trucks, their very expensive houses, because they can no longer afford those. And when it comes to our hospital, I take a lot of, I have a very personal relationship with our hospital. I did before I was a staff member up there. I volunteered over the last 10 years. I helped revamp the labor and delivery unit. I was able to get donations from everybody in town. Ramon donated, I think it was 6 CDs and stereos for the moms that are going to be in labor so they can listen to their music. And John Shirley donated hours. Our community really pulled together to paint and refurbish this entire labor and delivery unit, and it was amazing. So when I look at our hospital, it isn't just this building that has this roof on it that we go to when we're sick. This is our home. Our family members who have been born there, our family members have passed away there. Our family members have healed there. A lot of us have gone there for our worst days and our best days. And we are all part of the community. So the idea of our local hospital failing scares the hell out of me. Not only as a patient, and not only as a former staff member, but as the daughter of a local business owner. What does that mean? We won't be able to hire new employees. Who's going to want to move to a town that does not have a good, stable, rural hospital? Who's going to want to go teach in a town that does not have a good, stable, rural hospital that they can take their kids to at 3 a.m. because, that's when kids always wake up with fevers. We need to have that. So recently I left RMCH as an employee, and I'm working for an amazing organization here in town. And I really feel like all of us as a community can still pull together. We can still pull together and we can try to show force and say, this is not how we want this to end. This is not acceptable in our community. And we can fight for this and tell them exactly what we expect of them. I know that even with everything that has gone on up there, if one of my children woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning tomorrow with fever, I would still take them to RMCH ER. The nurses, the med techs, the doctors, I have been loved back to health time and time and time again up there. I trust them. I love them. I know everybody has a different personal feeling about this, with different personal experiences, and I honor your experiences. But my experience with my hospital, and I'm unfortunately a chronic patient, I've gone up there multiple times, they will take care of you. But Chantelle's right, we can't get the finances up if the finances aren't there. So even knowing what I know, I still trust my hospital. I just don't trust the hospital management company that is running it. So as a community member, former staff member, former coordinator, always a coordinator. This is my community and this is your community, and we need to fight for it. So, thank you.
I will say Jalen's stance on this is universal. So when we interviewed all those 33 people who responded to our survey, we asked them, what's the best thing about working in the hospital? Every single person, 100% of people said the people, my coworkers. And a very close second, and I don't know why the one person didn't select this answer, was serving patients in my community. So we have incredible assets at the hospital as people. Anyway, does anyone have any? Angela?
Should I come up here?
Yeah.
In the middle.
Just to follow up a little bit on what Jalen said as far as the experience goes with the hospital. understand, I had my first 2 daughters in Orlando, Florida, when I made my medical private hospital and when at Arlen Palmer Hospital for Medicine or for Children. And then I had my son, he came along 5 years later and he was her. And I was here, and I had him here. And out of all 3 birthing experiences, this was number 1. I mean, you're talking about I had some high-grade hospitals, but because I knew the doctor, I knew the nurses, it just made the experience that much more. And that's what we're trying to hold on to here. A lot of people say, why don't we bring in UNM? Why don't we bring in Presbyterian? Because we want to hold on to our hospital as a community because of these personal experiences that we have. Every time one of my children got sick, I had great experiences there. I don't have a lot of faith in it now. I mean, my son just recently, I mean, he's a grown man now, he cut his finger open 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, where the hell am I gonna take him? So I took him up to GNIC because I was like, I just heard horror stories of our hospital. And he got extraordinary care there. He wasn't Native American. I said, did you guys get him in? His hands cut, he's bleeding all over the floor. And they're like, immediately got him in, stitched him up, took care of him. And that's what we expect, that's what we had previously from our hospital. So, big questions that I hear a lot as a business owner and among my constituents is, why don't we get UNM to come in here or Presbyterian? The reason is we have no control and we're in the same kind of situation probably. We want to take control of our hospital and we need to find a way. And the reason this meeting is established is I want to know how it can be done. I hear all the statistics, we know the hospital's down, but I want to know who's going to take over. Who's going to make this hospital happen? Who's going to step up? If this management company exits, are we going to bring back Dr. Wangler? Are we going to bring back Kayla? Are these people going to come back? Who's going to be in charge? Who's going to be responsible?
So I think that's an excellent question. I think that you do have some very smart people in this community who are working on the answer to that question. I think that, without more specifics, we can ask you guys, what do you want from the hospital? What will make you trust the hospital again? I'm going to throw that question out here. If it pulls them all over. Oh, sorry, Kayla.
Yeah, so my name is Caleb Laubert. I'm one of the docs that was over at RMCH, but and I was born and brought up in this area. I'm Navajo. I speak Navajo. I was the only Navajo speaking physician, and I also have my MBA in health management. And I posed a threat to Don Smithberg, and he terminated me. So I was the only one that had a panel of Navajo speaking patients. And so it was a loss. I really felt bad when I was forced to leave. So my dedication is to this area, and this is my home, and I have my education, I have my MD, I have my MBA, I got teacher of the year, teaching a residency program, so my heart was into this. And so it was kind of a sad thing, but the question that I have for Chantelle, and you are a breath of fresh air, let me tell you. But my question to you is that we program rural healthcare and issues like that to the board and whatnot, and it went nowhere. What makes you think that they're going to listen to you in this situation?
Give her the mic. Oh, that's such a good question. I don't know if I have an answer offhand, except that I've done this before, and I'll do it again. I've been around hospitals in multiple different states. I have worked with the wealthiest doctor in America, Dr. Patson Chung. I've worked with smaller groups of local physicians and community hospitals. This is not beyond prepared. I think it's going to take concerted effort because I can't do it on my own. I need the community support and I need the community voice to back this financial improvement plan and really make sure that we hold me, because I'm a CHC employee, and my employer's responsible for following through with this plan.
I hope it's okay. I speak for some folks. So you asked, Angela, a question about who's going to run the hospital. So frankly, I will tell you that I think that within our community itself, we have the talents and we have the experience to run this hospital. I don't think we can do it completely by ourselves. We do need some outside help, but we need carefully selected outside help that we know is here in the service of our hospital and our community. So one proposal is that we have a number of physicians in the community who have the experience and who have the commitment and the stance that patients matter more than profits. And so it is a known model to put forward a management service organization where the physicians actually are the ones who take over the management of the hospital. The Harvard Business Review put out a study that demonstrated that the hospitals that are run by physicians actually outperform, or in many ways outperform other types of hospitals in general. And that's because of two things. First of all, you have leadership that you have the community trust. And second of all, people who go into medicine, generally speaking, and who serve in rural communities like this do it because they believe in service and they believe in serving a community. And so you know that these are people who are mission-oriented, who are going to be aligned with the needs of the community and the needs of the staff who are there also to serve the community. So this is something that we can work on. We have smart people in this community who are working on that right now. Anyway. Oh, yes, please.
Hi, everybody. Quick question. You mentioned there's like 3 to 7 days of cash on hand. What would be normal for a hospital of our size?
Yeah, this is a Tim and poor Chantelle question.
So two-parter. I'm confused. You are a CHC employee,
That's correct.
but it sounds like you're in a confrontational relationship with the new CEO who's a CHC employee. How does that play out?
They're prepared to comment on that.
Okay.
Let me ask in theory, is it feasible for a community to hire you away from CHC?
I don't want to put Chantelle in there. She really is here, it's just sort of. That's a cash question.
So 6 months? That's supposed to be.
So if anyone didn't hear, 6 months is what's normal to be cash in hand in the hospital. And we have been asking Mr. McCurtain and board members how many days of cash on hand are available, and we have seen that number dwindling. It was, I think, the last time I asked him, at least 30 days.
But just to follow,
Yes, please.
you know, in theory, we should all have 6 months of savings in our bank accounts, but most people don't. How many hospitals?
You're not on recording.
Sorry, Rich. You know, in theory, most people should have 6 months of savings in their account, and most people don't. So how many hospitals actually have that 6 months cycle of cash?
I don't have those stats in front of me, but I can tell you that our hospital has a 62-day collections. We should have a minimum of 62 days of cash.
She's got one.
Oh, you have to keep it.
My name is Amparo Mesri, and I am the owner and qualifying broker of Cedar and Ivy Real Estate in Gallup. Now, I'm gonna kind of piggyback off of what Jalen was saying, and, I'm sorry. Chantelle. I'm gonna kind of piggyback, because what we don't know as a community is that every house sale generates $60,000 back into a community. Now, we have been hit, my family still works, my husband still works for the refinery, but all of his coworkers do not anymore. And we did see a huge impact with people leaving our community to go to other communities to work in other refineries. We did see people stay, but our community is impacted every time there's a turnaround with the hospital. Every single employee that leaves then leaves a house behind. And right now, of course, summer gets hot, but every doctor, every nurse, every cafeteria worker that comes in and purchases a home brings $60,000 of revenue. That's also taxes, that's GRT, that's all of those things that are brought into our community. And so we really need to pay attention, and it's really important that we as a community do not lose this hospital to something that's just contractual, or people that are being brought in and are paying 3 times that price. They're not buying homes, they're renting a room, they're renting somebody's investment home, they're paying somebody else's mortgage, and they're living just week to week here. It's really important. I have clients that are actually leaving the community as we speak because they're terrified that something will happen in their older age and they will not have the healthcare services that are necessary in order for them to actually live. So we have to pay attention to that. When you have mothers that have to travel 2 hours, 3 hours to get to a doctor's appointment just in case there's an emergency, they're staying in Albuquerque for 2 or 3 weeks before they actually give birth, because you don't know when you're going to give birth sometimes, or you're a high-risk patient. We need to pay attention to that stuff. That stuff impacts our community, and I'm really looking forward to hearing that you work for us.
I'm going to piggyback what she had to say just a little bit. As a property owner that rents out property, I'm sorry, I'm Bill Harlan. I am Caleb's spouse, so I've been affected. So I've been affected by his termination. We've been affected by the hospital's turmoil. We have rental properties that we had a 3-year lease on, 2 positions, one working for GMIC, one working for RCH. We lost both of them in our community and the profits they would have brought to your businesses because of the turmoil that took place at this hospital under the management of CHC. So if you don't think it affects you, just think of the dollars they could have brought into your businesses. Think of the amount of money that you're going to lose because they're not here to spend it. It's really going to affect everyone's bottom line. Thank you.
I'm in the center, if you wouldn't mind, I'll just stand here. I don't think I can get up there. Anyway, it's been kind of interesting listening to everybody, Dr. Wangler. I mean, my mind was going around, I don't start rambling on here, but when she said we capitalize on our employees and the hospital, you know, that is so true, because yes, we are losing people, but it scares me. When I campaigned to run for mayor, I said I was going to try and bring in 15 businesses every year. And I'll tell you, I've come to the conclusion that that's the mayor's position is to find money. I mean, that's what we do. We've got potholes, we've got everything that we need to find money. And now we're at the same situation with the hospital. One of the things that happened, I don't know, 30 years ago, I'm good at bringing up things that were brought up 30 years ago. But the hospital brought in a person to raise money. And if I don't know if any of you remember, her motion was brought in specifically to raise money. And he was very successful. So I'm not getting on yet. The other thing that when Mr. Whitaker was talking, it reminded me again when I was campaigning. Somebody asked me, what's the first 4 things you're going to do? And that's what I'd like to know with Mr. Whitaker is going to do the first 4 things.
So I think you mean Mr. Putnam.
Oh.
It's okay. Oh, no. Whatever. Oh, you mean the CEO, new CEO. Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Okay.
Sorry.
Anyway, I don't further than ramble on any further. I appreciate being invited tonight, and I've gotten a lot out of it. I know some friends here, and Sarah is here, so just to let you know, the city council is really pushing on it. Thank you.
Yeah, we so appreciate it.
My name is Pam Hartley, and I'm a former, long-time, 34 years educator in the public school systems. I know most of the people I know because I know their kids. Radhika's here, Jennifer's here, Jalen's here. I know them because I know your kids. And the other people I know used to wear speedos since I worked with people. So you guys are totally overdressed. But the public schools are funded by the number of students that are in our schools. And as people leave our communities and take their children with them, we are losing funding for the schools. It breaks my heart to listen to former colleagues talk about how they have to cover so-and-so's class, so they have like 30 extra students in their classroom because they don't have teachers. They don't have subs to cover. It just breaks my heart for them that they are having to deal with this. I'm glad I'm not there anymore, but your children deserve better than this. Doctors for their children. So that's my viewpoint.
Okay, I just wanted to make a quick comment. I think what everybody said is, oh, I have to introduce myself? Oh,
Because of the.
I'm Sarah Piano, I'm sorry. I used to actually work at the hospital years ago. I was in the PR department, and I remember it being really like a family at that time. And this isn't to discredit what everybody said. I think what people have said is really accurate and true, and it affects our economy. But I guess to me, what are the action steps? What can we do to help this group that's trying to take the action? Because I'm kind of an action person, and I feel like we're stating all the facts. There's an issue with the hospital. We don't have cash on hand. We don't know if CHC group is going to get out. But what are we doing to change that? And I feel like that's what we need to come to a conclusion about. I know you said there's 5 steps that the county did. They did implement the first step of getting a new CEO. But I'm curious about the board. I know we talked previously, and you said we really want more local board members. To my knowledge, there's 3 local board members currently on the board now. But I've also heard that the process of getting new local board members is difficult, and they're not often let onto the board. So are there steps that we can take to help your group get more local board members? Because that seems like the first initial step to me, right? Get local board members, because they're the ones that have the say. Because at the end of the day, what you're trying to accomplish is to get CHC out, right? That's what the community group wants. But what has to happen to make that happen? And I'm not trying to get Chantelle fired or get her out on this group. But I mean, if that's the end goal, what are the action steps to make that happen? Because us just stating the facts and saying it's hurting the economy, we're losing people, like that's all true, but that doesn't change the fact that at the end of the day, CHP is still in charge. So, and I don't know, I don't have all the answers, but you guys have been working on this for a while, I know with Rose Easton. I mean, are there steps we could take, Connie, to help get better management on the board as the first step?
That is an excellent question, and it brings me to perhaps the other points that are on our petition, which I think still are hold true even as we've been circulating this petition for over a month. But first thing is that we want so we do want local representation on the board. We want to form a community advisory board, which is a best practice in other institutions. And it's a way for the board of trustees and executive leadership to have a way to talk to the community. The community members serve as ambassadors for the hospital back to the community. And with major infrastructure changes, call to make an appointment for your sick child or to fill your important prescription. The community advisory board is there to understand how to troubleshoot that. So one of the concerns that has been brought up, when we've been discussing some of these ideas, is that it's pulling teeth to get people to participate in things like this. And so I just kind of want to show of hands here. How many of you would be willing to, or know somebody who would be willing to participate on something like a community advisory board? Yeah. I mean, I see about a third of the room, which is pretty good. And how many of you can think off the top of your head one person you think would be qualified to serve on the board of directors, the board of trustees, who you think is qualified and could do a good job of representing the community?
With the current qualifications or with what we see?
Well, the current qualifications are that anybody needs to be somebody who has hospital experience, and so I think that can be defined fairly generally speaking. So, for example, Jeremy is a local community member, and he's not a healthcare provider, but he served as a lawyer to the hospital, so he needs that qualification. But how many of you know somebody who you think would be qualified to serve on the board of trustees? And it's local, yeah. So I'm getting I'm getting a lot of nods. So I think we have that, and I think just making sure that we demonstrate that is the first thing. I think that the second thing is that coming out to just show and force that we are here to support our hospital. So I told you already that, there are staff members, people at the hospital who are trying to serve patients who have to buy their own toilet paper, buy their own baby wipes, who have bed cards sealed from other hospitals in order to be able to provide basic patient care. So we are organizing a drive in order to actually try to provide some of those supplies to the hospital on Wednesday. And just show, so we're calling it a supply drive and a rally that will take place at the intersection of Boardman and College from 3:30 to 5 on Wednesday. If you want to come and just, hold a sign with us and it's supposed to be to show these, the people who are working in the hospital that we support them. And if you want to bring donations of either food, basic office supplies, I know you can bring in toilet paper, but toilet paper, then that's something that you can bring to the parking lot at First Baptist. And we're circulating a flyer about that. And we'll try to get a little bit more organized. I know some people reach out and ask if we donate money, and we'll try to get some of those details in order as well as a more sensitive list of these from the hospital. But I think these are the things that we can do to show people that care. And also, just making sure that the county commission knows too that our community is ready to help. Because the county commission, they have been incredibly, they have been working with us, and it's very clear that they too are concerned about the healthcare in this community. And so the more that they know the communities behind them, supports them in making big decisions about the hospital, I think the better. There is a county commissioner meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. and the Art Stage lease is on the agenda. We understand that the Board of Trustees is intending to approach the commission to ask them to reinstate the lease. It is very clear that none of the 5 commissions, despite the fact that we have a new CEO, we have a new CEO in name, but it's very clear that he is not the new CEO. That is clear that Mr. Smithberg is still very clearly in charge. So we don't actually have a new CEO, and we don't have any steps towards transparency or communication. We know that these things are going to take a long time to implement, but we haven't even seen the first steps. And in fact, as I said, these monthly meetings with administration and the physician group have been actually canceled. So we've taken backward steps. So I think it's we just want to make it clear that that none of these conditions have been met, and that we have higher expectations for our hospital, and that we stand behind our county commission as they try to navigate this very difficult decision.
buy basic supplies for the hospital right now, just in this immediate crisis.
Yeah. I think we need to work out that detail. Yeah, I mean, if other folks are better at fundraising, if other folks are good at this sort of fundraising or have some experiences, it would be really super appreciated because we're trying, but I know that I personally don't have this kind of experience, and so. Sarah, they're calling you. Yeah. City council, but. We don't call him.
Yeah, I think that these are all incredibly important things for all of us to be doing. I also think that we just can't emphasize enough how urgent and dire the situation is. I mean, that degree of shortage of cash on hand, it's a really incredibly pressing situation. And so I also understand, getting new board members takes time. These things take time. Like, are those enough to make a difference? And so I don't know if that's I'm putting words in your mouth, Sarah, but part of what I'm concerned about is, how can we get enough momentum to turn things around on what's really an incredibly short timeline? And I was really bothered, frustrated by the board meeting this last week. I don't know if anyone had a chance to tune in, but really at the behest of the Community Health Action Group, which has done such an amazing job trying to drive some of this change. The board now has an open session for community participation and for the community to understand a little bit better how things are at the hospital. I was able to log on to the Zoom portion of that, and it was maybe 10 minutes at most. That took a while to get the technology up and running. And Chantelle did a great job presenting thoughts around our 180-day plan and how we could make some of those improvements. But there were no financials presented. There were no patient volumes. I understand patient volumes are down by close to half year over year. None of the actual substance of what's going on in the hospital, other than get some really important ideas about how to get out of this, were presented at all. And I think that the current management doesn't understand this community. They don't understand that. I think that they underestimate what we bring to the table, and that we are listening, and that you can't just gloss over, pretend to have transparency, and be like, great, thanks for including us. Transparency is about actually telling people what's going on, hearing the community. Some community members spoke, and the board said, thanks. There was no, back and forth, hey, we understand that's a really important problem. We're going to put that, on our agenda and make sure it gets fixed. And so we have, and that's one of the conditions on the revocation of the lease is that transparency piece. And I think that this last board meeting was worse than, there were a couple where they couldn't figure out how to run the Zoom. But for the ones that there's actually been a public component, it seemed to be the least information that we've ever gotten. And so that's really concerning to me that we have a new CEO, we have this county mandate that says, hey, if you don't do these things in 180 days, you're out of the building. Like, that's a really serious threat. And the hospital's like, okay, well, we'll just, not really worry about those things. And I think that really says something about the esteem that they hold us in the housing community. I think we really have to say, hey, that's not good enough. I think we have to be at the county meeting, I think we have to be at the board meetings. I think we just have to say over and over again, we're here, we're listening, we are intelligent, bright people that can think through these things, and it's got to be better.
Connie? Yes, ma'am.
One more thing, can I just? Oh, sorry. To follow up what Dr. Wangler said, a few of us went to that board meeting the other day. We were so happy that Dr. Wangler came over and introduced himself to us. And we're like, oh, this is great, because nobody's actually done this before. And then we're like, what a sucker. That's the only word I can use to say it. That he was blowing smoke from the mirrors, so just, yes, it was all, it was a lie. It was a total lie.
I know that it's getting sort of like late I don't know, I also want to sort of, see if you have any, like, you know, and after listening to the things that we have in our community, if you have any particular words of advice, because I do want to then just move on to a exercise that I think will help gather some information that we can present to decision makers. But yeah, we want to hear what your wisdom is. Can you hear us? Oh, do you have any wisdom for us? After hearing us.
Dr. Booth, you cut that out.
Oh, sorry.
And do you want me to edit it right here, so?
I'm trying to wrap up. I just wanted to ask you if you have any words of wisdom for us. As you know, what specific things have you experienced, from business leaders? Like, what are the things? How are the ways that you work with business leaders? What are the concrete things that they can do to help our hospital?
Well, I think the one thing is to be engaged. I think there are serious questions that need to be answered. I think good leadership can answer those. I think it's important to stay engaged and understand what's going on. Healthcare is a different kind of business. So a lot of things we think about and running organizations, healthcare has life and death impact. But I encourage all of you to get engaged. The other thing is the money that's involved here is quite a bit. There's a lot of things that go on. People are always concerned about the cost of healthcare and what it takes to run an organization this size. People think it was, a small community hospital, but it is a multi-million-dollar operation and very complex. That's why it really takes everyone to be involved with this. One thing I will tell you is the National Rural Health Association is having their annual conference in Albuquerque in a couple of weeks. So I know some great rural health leaders that will be there in your state. There's anything some of them can do. A lot of us that have been engaged in rural healthcare want to see community hospitals thrive. They want to see rural communities, our communities thrive. It's important to do that. So if there's any way to take advantage of that, or even we actually help the community, we're glad to. But I'm here for you. I wish you the best of luck, but it is hard work and it's a long road back to get to where you're a 4- or 5-star community hospital. But you can get there, especially if you've got the passion and the ability to work together.
Thank you. Any questions for? I think we should probably. It's very hard to find a graceful way to say goodbye on Zoom. So I thought maybe I can release you from this particular part of the meeting because you've been so generous. He's actually on vacation in the Poconos. But thank you, and we will be seeing you in a couple weeks when you come out from the conference. Oh, actually, Dr. Cruz has a question for you. Yeah? Doctor? Yeah.
Thanks, Tim. I just wanted to know, maybe for everybody, if we have an advisory committee, what kind of leverage would that have? What would they be able to do that would influence the board or the administration?
Okay, so the questions about an advisory committee, if I heard that.
What kind of things can an advisory committee do? What's their value? What kind of leverage do they have?
Generally, in community hospitals, the board of directors is really the advisory, in that advisory committee. The only time it's different is when generally when it's different, is when it's the community hospital is part of a larger system, and the board is the board of the system, so you don't have that local voice. But for the most part, the board of directors in virtually every community hospital is that voice of the local community, is that this is what's going on, they're the conduit. As a CEO, I always use the board to say, help me understand what's going on, because our service areas are so large in areas that I don't understand, or in demographics that I don't hang out with, in this business group, or this agricultural group, always good to have that input. I've seen it where certain foundations, there's a hospital foundation, and that foundation will serve an advisory capacity. It's very difficult to raise money for a hospital because you guys have done this. And, all right, so help me understand that. As an administrator, as a CEO, you're always kind of looking for that perspective and empathy from the community. So any kind of group that could officially advisory board can't, make policy changes or can't make changes to the hospital bylaws or of that nature. So that makes it tough. And it really depends on how much the hospital leadership or board is willing to listen to the advisory.
I will say that actually, in response to your question, that actually we have a hospital that has had in recent history a patient advisory board, and that's Chigalpin Medical Center. So for several years, GIMC actually did have a relatively powerful and very patient advisory board, and the objective was really to try to get representation from all the different chapter houses. And so they actually were very involved in, gathering information from the community for important questions like where are we going to site the new hospital. So we have actually people in this, and what we've been working towards is trying to make sure that not only does that we want the board and leadership not just to represent the community, but the diversity of our community. RMCH, over 70% of patients served at RMCH are from the Navajo or Zuni communities. And so we want those people to have, we want those patients to have a voice. We want to make sure that when decisions get made about personnel, that it doesn't include letting go the only Navajo-speaking physician that's working at the hospital. Yeah, with Dr. Laubert. In case anybody was curious about that. So. Does anyone have any more questions for Ms. Dr. Putnam before we let her go?
Have a good vacation.
Thank you. JP says have a good vacation. And thank you so much. Okay. All right.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time. See you then. All right, sorry. I'm trying to end this meeting and I can't figure out how these. Oh, here.
In the corner.
Oh my gosh, Rose has been watching me just asking herself, why is she such an idiot? Okay, actually there is one sort of thing that, and while I think we have time for for people to give comment, but if we could have somebody come and help distribute these and pen and maybe pens. Thank you, Brett. So we did want to just gather some information. We want to take this data back to decision makers and just show them that how the business community can be engaged. We want to generate some ideas. So if you can just take these cards and answer one question, both questions, whatever. We'll gather these and try to see if we can come up with some paths. See if there's some kind of ideas.
So you had mentioned a press release.
Sorry?
You mentioned a press release.
Yes, sorry. The press release I mentioned included the information about that while we were excited about the new CEO, we are disappointed that he is actually in reality appears to be serving as a proxy for the old CEO. He fired several positions, and we are, and then just the news that the board that the board of trustees and the hospital have not met any of the conditions that were in that commission. Sorry, I wasn't very excited. But actually, answer one or all of these questions, and we'll take that information and try to make it useful. So, I think we want. I'm gonna
when the county reconstituted the board, part of the reasoning was that they couldn't appoint people to the board was because of something having to do with the Open Meetings Act. I don't quite understand why that's an important thing. Why shouldn't meetings be open to the public? So, I think if we're meeting with the county, or the county is going to be looking at these kinds of things, maybe they need to reconsider that. Maybe somebody else can answer that question, but I don't understand why that's the issue.
Why meetings can't be open?
Yeah.
I think that the answer that we received is that because, forgive me, I'm not a government official, but because it's not government business, that it doesn't for that reason fall under the requirements of the Open Meetings Act. Is my understanding of where,
As a private organization, it doesn't.
Right.
But it would have to be the county appointed board members, and I don't understand why that's a problem.
It sounds like a duck diver question, to be honest with you.
There's the question that we can get.
Yeah, no, I think that's.
I think it's very important that we're trying to get the county to.
No, I think that these are great questions, and I know the county's been mulling over some of these same questions as well, so, yeah. While we're doing our homework, I don't know if anyone else has. I was talking a lot of good, seeing a lot of great rest. Come out upstairs.
Can I ask a follow-up question, please? Okay.
Okay, so I'm not aware of who the local members on the board are, so could you name me?
Yeah, sure. So the chairman of the board is Steve McKernan, who is the former CEO of UNM. He brought along with him Deb Berens, who I believe used to serve on the National New Mexico Hospital Association. I may be misrepresenting her background. Then there is Jeremy Gay, who is a local lawyer who has been involved with the hospital previously. There is, I'm sorry, Bill Lee. Oh my gosh, how could we forget Bill Lee, who I think everybody in this room knows from the Chamber of Commerce and from, just being around in his other limbs. Believe, I guess. And then, the chief of staff is a vice officio, but still a voting member, and that currently is Dr. Kim Collins. And, Genevieve, yes, Jenny Burbrand, who runs a local clinic called the Federal Quality Health Center. So she's also on the board. There is also an ex officio member, a non-voting member, who is appointed by the county, and that seat is currently open because Bill used to fill that position, but then he actually became a voting board member. And the CEO is the last member. A non-voting member, but he is a member. The current CEO.
One more comment. Sure. Because I share Sarah's urgency about what can we do now. And so I was just chatting with Chantelle. She needs to figure out a way that we can, those of us who like to write a check to help the hospital with immediate supplies can do that and not have to go to CHC. So Chantelle will be working on that. And hopefully by Wednesday we're going to have our rally and we'll have an answer for that.
I actually will also give one more thing, is that I think a very easy thing to do is just we need to educate each other. So all of you in this room have so much knowledge now, and I think you have a lot of knowledge, much more knowledge about more recent events than I think most people in this community will. Share our website, it's rmchsrhospital.org. You can go to our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/rmchsrhospital, because really that's the heart of it. RMCH is our hospital, not CHC's hospital, it's our hospital, and we're going to make it so. Yeah, so just go talk to people, tell them to, educate themselves about this. We can do this, we can merge with another institution, or be run by CHC. Yeah. Anyway, I have thank you for coming.
Don't you know